Ever wonder if there's like a pattern to how the world reacts to huge innovation?
Mhm.
Like, are there cautionary tales that today's biggest players should be paying attention to?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're diving into
Uh-huh.
today, using Elon Musk as our prime example.
Interesting.
So to really dissect that, we're going to be putting Elon under the microscope,
Okay.
comparing his trajectory
Right.
to another titan who faced some pretty serious pushback,
Mhm.
Jack Ma,
Yeah.
Alibaba, and financial powerhouse. Two incredibly different industries, two wildly different continents,
Right.
yet their stories share some striking parallels.
It's kind of eerie, right?
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often see these larger-than-life figures making waves, shaking things up.
But is there a point where that disruption goes too far? That's the question.
That's the question, right? And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Exactly.
So, for those needing a quick refresh, Elon Musk, electric cars with Tesla, SpaceX pushing the boundaries with Neuralink.
Right.
He's gone from tech genius to like global influencer, weighing in on everything from politics to, well, you've seen his feed.
Yeah. And it's that evolution from innovator to influencer,
Yeah,
that willingness to step outside his lane,
right.
that makes this comparison to Jack Ma so thought-provoking.
Because Ma did the same thing.
He did.
But in a completely different world,
Okay.
he built Alibaba into this e-commerce empire. Then with Ant Financial, he was taking on the entire global financial system.
And he was practically untouchable,
Right.
for a while at least, meeting with world leaders, driving the conversation on the future of the digital landscape.
Yeah.
He was everywhere.
It was like he was the guy,
Yeah.
and then boom, sudden crash.
Yeah.
That's the part that should have everyone on the edge of their seats.
It's almost Shakespearean, how quickly the tides can turn.
Oh, yeah.
One minute you're at the top, the next you're facing the consequences of flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this deep dive so crucial. What can we learn from May's experience?
Yeah.
Are there lessons here for someone like Elon Musk?
Who's arguably on a similar trajectory.
Exactly.
Yeah, and let's be clear. We're talking about huge questions here. We're
Well-
not just comparing two guys with big ideas.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
talking about the line between innovation and regulation.
Mm-hmm.
How far is too far? And whether there are universal truths when it comes to challenging the powers that be.
It's a big one.
So let's rewind for a sec and unpack that whole crash thing we were talking about with Jack Ma.
Right.
Because this wasn't like just experimenting with a new app or something.
Right.
He was taking on the very foundations of the global financial system.
He was. And
It's a big deal.
with this kind of swagger and boldness
Oh, yeah.
that made people both admire him and fear him a little bit,
Oh,
It's like, who is this guy?
yeah. So, okay, Ant Financial. Picture
Yeah.
this. You've got this platform that's like bypassing traditional banks,
Right?
offering loans to practically anyone with a smartphone,
Yeah.
and growing at this crazy pace. It was disrupting everything.
Those headlines about Ant's IPO.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It was poised to be the biggest stock market debut in history.
Insane.
That's how massive Ma's reach had become.
It's like, how could anything stop this guy? And
and then,
that's when the other shoe dropped.
right.
The Chinese government steps in, halts the IPO,
Wow.
and Ma, vanishes from public view for months.
Yeah, it was wild. Nobody knew where he was. It was really strange.
Yeah.
Now, the official reason, of course, was systemic risks,
Right.
concerns about ants lending practices, all that. But
Yeah,
it sent shockwaves through the entire tech world. I mean, here was a guy who seemed untouchable and then suddenly,
just like that.
brought low practically overnight.
And it left everyone wondering, right, was this really about financial regulations or was it something bigger? Was this about Ma's growing influence, his audacity to challenge the status quo?
Exactly.
And that's the question that's so relevant to Elon Musk right now.
Because you've got Musk acquiring Twitter.
Well, X now, right?
Right, now X, of
Okay.
course. But yeah, immediately turning it into this global platform for his own opinions.
Right.
He's out there publicly criticizing regulations, sparring with politicians.
I mean, you got to admire the boldness.
It's bold, to say the least.
It's like he's not even trying to play the game.
Right.
He's like, I'm going to change the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And he's not just talking.
Mm.
He's making huge moves at Twitter itself. Mass layoffs, overhauling the entire structure.
Yeah, it's all about
Efficiency, right?
efficiency, disrupting the traditional ways of doing business.
It's like move fast and break things.
Yeah.
but in like the whole world.
Well, and this is where the parallels to Jack Ma get really interesting.
Yeah.
Both of them are driven by this unshakable belief in technology's power to completely upend the way things have always been done.
Yeah. It's like they both looked at the world and said, we can do this better.
Exactly. Whether it's finance with Ma or social media and information with Musk, they're both challenging those deeply entrenched systems.
And they're not asking for permission.
Not at all.
Now, remember how we were talking about Ant Financial and like how it was about more than just loans? It was about access to financial systems,
Right.
challenging the gatekeepers.
Right.
Well, you could say Musk is kind of doing the same thing, but with information.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at how he frames that whole Twitter takeover.
Which is X now.
X.
Yeah.
Right. It's all about free speech, challenging censorship, even if it ruffles some feathers along the way.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, when you disrupt something as fundamental as how information flows, are you really prepared for what comes next?
It's like you're shaking the foundations of, well, everything.
Exactly.
And it makes you wonder about the whole AI thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all know Musk is like knee-deep in that world, not just through his companies, but his whole vision for the future.
And this is where things get really interesting and kind of scary, honestly.
Right.
Because AI could revolutionize everything, but it's like the Wild West out there.
Yeah.
Totally unregulated in a lot of ways.
It's moving so fast. And then you've got Musk, who's already pushing boundaries with self-driving cars, Neuralink.
Right. Is he pushing too fast with AI, just like Ma might have with those lending practices?
It's a good question. It's like, where's that line?
It's a tightrope walk, that's for sure. On one hand, you need that drive, that relentless push to innovate. But then there's the other side, the ethical stuff, the societal impact. You can't just ignore that.
Especially with something this big.
Exactly. And, governments are watching all this,
Yeah.
right? Trying to figure out how to encourage progress, but also...
Not let everything go totally off the rails.
Exactly. Which brings us back to our main question. Is Musk like a modern-day Icarus, flying too close to the sun and all that?
It's like a Greek myth for the tech age, right?
Totally. And honestly, there's no easy answer. But here's what I think makes this whole comparison so important. It forces us to look at a huge EE question. How do we as a society deal with innovation that challenges like the very fabric of our systems? Do we adapt? Do we regulate? Or do we stifle progress because we're too afraid of what might happen?
It's a tough one. And, we can't predict the future, but...
But we can learn from the past.
Exactly. And Jack Ma's experience, as crazy as it was, showed us that even the most powerful people aren't immune to consequences, especially when you're messing with things like global finance or now the flow of information.
It's a cautionary tale, no doubt. But it's also a reminder that progress can be messy. The challenge for everyone, really, is to find a way to move forward without breaking everything in the process.
It's a balancing act, and one that, we'll be watching really closely. Is there a different path for Elon? Can he rewrite the ending? Or are some forces just too big to overcome? That's something for all of us to think about.